welcome to your home study. So today what we're going to look at is how we can actually decipher what key a mode belongs to by using the 7 shapes of the major scale, or even using the modal shapes to give you a starting point if you're going to jam along to a backing track online, or even play a gig and you've got to play solo, and all those kind of things. So let's start off. So we were looking at the 7 shapes of the major scale in G major. Sorry. Okay, cool. So yeah, our 7 shapes, hopefully you know them. If not, I'd recommend revising them or learning them. Learn the 7 shapes of the major scale, but maybe learn them in G major. It's a nice it kind of gives you a nice area to work on when you're moving up the fretboard. And then come back to this video. So anyway, so we can use these shapes to one, give us a starting point when we're playing along to the backing track. So say you want to play along to Dorian backing track, and the Dorian backing track, in the title it says C Dorian. Okay, so when we do our major scale shapes in G major, we can name each of them the mode. We'll give each of them a modal name. So we've got the major scale, which is also known as Ionian. We call the first shape Ionian. Okay, and then we go along in the order of the modes. The second shape we call Dorian. The third shape we call Phrygian. The fourth shape we call Lydian. The fifth shape we call Mixolydian. And the sixth shape we call Aeolian, which is also known as the natural minor scale. And then we've got the 7th shape we call Locrian. Okay, so we've got those 7 shapes: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. And then it just continues up an octave. So now, going back to what I was saying before, if you've got a C Dorian backing track. Now, when we're in G major, you think, okay, so this is a G note on the 3rd fret, the low E, and then the next note along is an A. So the second shape, the major scale, starts from an A note, and we're calling that Dorian at the moment. So we know that if we ever play along to an A Dorian backing track, we've got a starting point here. So we've got that second shape of the major scale, or you can just think Dorian shape. That's how I like to think. Ionian shape, Dorian shape, Phrygian shape, and so on, rather than saying the second shape of the major scale. Because then if you then go and think of it in terms of Dorian, you're like, okay, so this is now the first shape of Dorian, which means that the 3rd shape of the major scale is actually the second shape of Dorian, and so on. It can get a bit confusing. So what I like to think of these shapes as modal names, because that gives us a starting point. So back again, if you're playing along to an A Dorian backing track, you know, oh, okay, there's my A note, played a Dorian shape. And that gives you a starting point to play with. So you can play around with that shape over an A Dorian backing track. But it gives you a starting point as well, because then if you feel quite fluent in the shapes, say you want to move up, or you're like, okay, I've been playing around with this shape, how do I then move away from it? But you think, okay, if this is my Dorian shape, then my Ionian shape is behind it, and my Phrygian shape is up in front of it. So now you can start trying to weave in and out of those. So say you... So you see how I was moving in and out, and that was from the Dorian shape to the Phrygian shape, back to the Dorian shape to the Ionian. And that gives you a starting point, and then you can carry on. You know, like if you're quite fluent with the shapes already, you know, you can. And so on, so you can go further up, and you're just passing through the different shapes, so you know, going Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian. Now bear in mind, because it's over a Dorian backing track, you're just playing in Dorian. So even though you're passing through your modal shapes, it's a repetition of the same notes, and over that context is Dorian. Now, so that gives us a starting point. So for example, going back to what I was saying, prior to that, if you have a Dorian backing track and you're like C Dorian, you're like, can I play along to this? Well, yes, you know your Dorian shape, and hopefully you know the notes along the E string. If you don't, really recommend learning them, but you can work it out. So for example, you know that the open string is an E, then you can kind of work it F. Remember, there's no sharp between E and F, so it's E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. No B sharp, so you go straight to C. Now you found your C. Now play your Dorian shape from there. And there you have a starting point to play in C Dorian. And then from that, then you've got C Dorian, and again, like we just looked at concept, you know that your Ionian shape's behind it, and even behind that is the Locrian shape, and then the Aeolian shape, and then you've got, in front of it, you've got the Phrygian shape, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, back to Locrian, Ionian, and then before you know it, you're back up to... Sorry, that was wrong. Before you know it, you're up into... You're in C Dorian up an octave. So hopefully you're starting to see that having these starting points, or learning these 7 shapes and then calling them a modal name gives you a starting point. So for example, let's look at it now. So if we now want to play G Lydian, you know where your G note is? E, F, F sharp, G. Okay, now play the Lydian shape from there. So you had a backing track, it's in Lydian, and it says it's in G Lydian. And you know that in front of Lydian is your Mixolydian shape, so if you're kind of jamming along and then you want to progress up the fretboard, Aeolian shape, but still it's over the G Lydian backing track. Back into Mixolydian shape. Back into Lydian. So you see now, knowing these 7 shapes as modal names gives you a starting point in any key, any mode. And you know, the more fluent you get with these 7 shapes, you know, you can now play in all 12 keys in all the different modes that belong to 12 different keys. Now, one last thing. So give this a go. Go onto YouTube, type in some modal names, pick a backing track. Usually the backing tracks say like F Lydian or G Dorian or E Aeolian. They tell you what your, you know, what key you're in. And then, so give that a go, and then start in your starting point modal shape, and then start experimenting, moving back to the one before that and the one after it, and then see how you get on. Now, a little bit extra is that this can also help you work out what the home key, the mode belongs to. So for example, when we're in C Dorian, so we find our C note, play our Dorian shape. We can then, okay, so we know that Dorian is the second mode, the major scale. So all we have to do is go down a tone to find Dorian's the second one, or starts from the second note of the major scale. All we have to do is go down a tone, which is 2 frets, and that gives us our key center. So C Dorian actually belongs to the key of B flat major, because that's where our Ionian shape is. So for another example, we're trying to work out what key. Well, let's have a look what key C mixolydian works out. So we find our C, we play our mixolydian shape. Now we know that mixolydian is the 5th mode of the major scale, or the 5th shape, if you want to think of it like that. So the 5th mode of the major scale. So what we have to do is work backwards in the major scale. So the 5th, go down to the 4th, which is where our Lydian is. Go down to the 3rd, which is just a semitone. So that's where our Phrygian is. Go down a tone, which is where our Dorian is. Then go down a tone again, and that's where our Ionian is, which gives us our key center. So C mixolydian belongs to the key of F, because that's our F note. Cool, so hopefully this makes sense, and hopefully this has given you some practical theory that you can go and then play guitar to and use, and also it gives you some theory to work out what key stuff belongs to. And like in the last lesson, you can then work out chords from there, because this helps with songwriting and composing as well, because once you get the hang of understanding what shapes belong to what key, you can then think, okay, so what are them I'm in this key, so what are my 7 chords in this key? And then you can start experimenting with combining with different combinations of chords, and then thinking of a rhythm. Like something I like to do if I'm just jamming is think, okay, so what if I think, okay, let's think key center, so F major, and then what if I then went to the second chord, which is G minor, or G minor 7, so F major 7, G minor 7, and then what if I go to the 4th chord, and then go to the 3rd, so and just think of a rhythm in my head. I was dum bum ba da dum ba 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 da da. Or we're thinking in a more rock context. So this can also help a lot of songwriting. I know I'm kind of just whizzing through some stuff, but watch this video as many times as you need to, and hopefully you'll start to get the gist of it, and it will help you with some more practical theory that you can use on the guitar. Hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to seeing your progress next time. Have a good one.